stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then remain standing for invocation by Councilman Culleton.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Loving God, we ask you to be with us tonight as we make decisions for the town of Paradise and its citizens. We ask you to guide us in doing the best work and rendering the best decisions we can. We ask for your protection and care for all of our citizens, our public safety personnel, and all those suffering throughout the country. Amen.
So, good evening. Roll call, Dana.
Roll call. Councilmember Bolin is absent. Councilmember Culleton.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Tryon is
Here.
Thank you. And for the record, Councilmember Tryon is joining us via Teams, and Mayor Crowder.
Here.
Thank you.
So, before we start, I'd like to get a consensus from council. Item 6B, I would like to remove this evening and bring it back next month when we have a full council to vote on. I think it's an important decision to make, and I think we all need to be present and part of it. So, thoughts?
Agree.
Okay with me.
Rose?
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you. So with that, let's go to item 1E. We have a proclamation, whereas the state of California has proclaimed the second week of October as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week, and whereas code enforcement officers provide for the safety, health, and welfare of citizens throughout the town of Paradise through the enforcement of local, state, and federal laws and ordinances dealing with various issues of building, zoning, housing, animal control, environmental health, life, and safety. And whereas code enforcement officers have challenging and demanding roles and often do not receive recognition for the job they do in improving quality of life for residents and businesses of local communities, and whereas the role of many code enforcement officers has expanded in recent years, with jurisdictions increasingly relying on the expertise and training of code enforcement officers in their communities, and whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified, and highly trained professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing communities, ensuring safety, and preserving property values through knowledge, training, and application of housing, zoning, and nuisance laws. And whereas code enforcement officers often have a highly visible role in the town of Paradise and regularly interact with the public and a variety of federal, state, county, and local officials in their capacity as code enforcement officers. And whereas the town of Paradise wants to recognize and honor code enforcement officers that serve our community and acknowledge their role in leading the way to improve quality of life within our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Council of the Town of Paradise hereby proclaims the second week of October in 2021 and annually thereafter be known as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week in the Town of Paradise. And be it further resolved that the Town Council calls upon the Town of Paradise residents to join in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the dedication and service by the individuals who serve as our code enforcement officers. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the Town of Paradise to be affixed hereto this 12th day of October 2021. I'd like to ask you please to come forward. Let me present this.
Guess you want us facing this way, huh?
I'm sorry?
Probably want us facing this way.
So, Tony? Okay. So I'd like to present this to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your hard work and service.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Say a few words?
First, I just want to thank the council for acknowledging this and approving this proclamation. The staff I work with are amazing people, and without them, the Town of Paradise Code Enforcement would just be floundering. We have great support from upper echelon management within the town itself, and at this point from the community members. And it's really great, and it's working for the community members to make their quality of life better is what's important. Town of Paradise is an awesome place, albeit I've only been here 6 months. I love it here, and I look forward to serving many more years here and continuing to improve the quality of life here as it should be expected. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on. Item 1F is Campfire recovery updates. They're all written reports. Brian Selecki, Recovery and Economic Project Manager, Recovery Projects. Any cards, questions?
Yeah, I have one, Brian. That tree on Billy Road, or is it Billy or Billy? The big oak tree that's dying that PG&E is. Oh. Forgot about the switch. That big tree on Billy, is it, that's dying, that I think PG&E is identified, that's in our town right away, that is scheduled to be taken out?
I don't believe it's scheduled currently, but it's one PG&E is aware of, and I keep mentioning to them to see if they're going to do something
Okay, and
about it.
it has a blue X on it.
Yeah, they were really helpful in taking an identical tree down that was about 50 yards
Yeah, I
down the
saw that
road.
one, yeah.
And so I think it's on their radar to
Okay.
be a priority,
Yeah, I
but
think that's,
it's turning pretty quick.
yeah, it's going
Yeah.
away quick.
Yeah.
And it's big.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions. Mark Maddox, an infrastructure and sewer update. Any questions, comments, cards? Tony Lindsay, Building and Code Enforcement update. Questions, cards? Okay. Item 2, consent calendar. Do I hear any motions, any cards?
I have no cards on this item.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second?
Motion by Jones, seconded by Culleton. Roll call vote. Councilmember Bolin is absent. Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Crowder.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, no items removed from the consent calendar. Item 4, public communication. Dina, any cards?
I have one card from Ward Habriel.
Thank you. Good evening, council. Since it's not on the agenda anyplace else, I thought I'd bring this up now. We don't have a Burger King. They're not coming back until we have 3,500 kids. That's kind of sad. Don't have a McDonald's. I heard them say we need 5,000 kids in town before they come back. No Safeway. We got no movies. We got no golf. No bowling. Last week I heard we ain't gonna have a hospital either. How about we figure out to get amenities in town for us, the people that live here, instead of losing amenities? Thank you for your time.
Okay. No more cards, Dina?
No more cards.
Okay. Item 6A, adopt the attached and proposed First Amendment to the franchise agreement between the Town of Paradise and Northern Recycling and Waste Services. Susan?
Thank you, Mayor Crowder. Good evening, council. This agenda item is a request to be heard by NRWS regarding some of the standards required in the current franchise agreement that allow for the potential 3-year extension of the franchise when it expires. One of those requirements is a customer satisfaction survey done in years 4 and 7 that have an 85% favorable response from the residents. And it's the year 4 survey that NRWS would like to talk about options to potentially either amend the percentage of favorable responses or have an open conversation about maybe moving or deferring the year 4 to another year. So Andrew Guidi with NRWS is here tonight and will be approaching the podium so he can direct this request to council.
Thanks, Susan. Mayor, council members, according to a franchise agreement that we currently have with the town of Paradise, and as Susan has stated, that in year 4, we are supposed to do a customer satisfaction survey. The current benchmarks is to have 85% of the responses come back as favorable. In 2013, we had roughly 9,000 accounts and just over 2,000 people actually participated in that, which is roughly 22% of our accounts that we had during that time frame. And that was year 7 of the first franchise agreement that we had. Looking to this year, we roughly have 2,400 accounts in the town of Paradise, which that would, if we were keeping on the same 22% rate that we had in 2013, then we're looking at getting about 540 responses back. And in order to reach the 85%, 461 of those are going to have to be favorable. Obviously, since the Campfire, this town's kind of been in more of a construction zone rather than an actual town. We've had a lot of roadblocks in front of us ever since then with the cleanup, with the tree program, the underground power project that's going on right now is proving to be a challenge when we're going down roads that are closed for a day or a week that we can't get down in service. So it's nice when those holidays hit because nobody's on the roads and we can actually get down the streets that we need to get down. Our recommendation originally was to lower it from 85% to 70%, but after speaking with town staff and Mr. Colleton, I feel that if we had some options, whether or not if we're going to lower the amount from 85% to 70%, or if we wanted to move it from year 4 to year 9, that way, obviously you guys understand the situation that Northern is in and trying to assign the franchise to a different hauler. That way you have 2 customer satisfaction surveys for that company, whoever decides to assume us. Because the outlook of our company is right now is unclear. Or the other option was to eliminate it, the year 4 customer satisfaction survey completely. I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say about it in regards to if you wanted to keep it as is, if you wanted to lower it, eliminate it, or move it to a different year within the franchise so you still have the 2 benchmarks for the extension. I'll take any questions if you guys have any.
I guess I'm first, huh? So I know there's been a lot of disruptions and a lot of people, I've gotten some calls from people that are concerned about the trucks backing up at 5 a.m. on some side streets. And when I called the office and asked about it on their behalf, because of the construction being done with all the undergrounding, a lot of streets aren't accessible during the regular route hours. So, you know, there's to get a favorable response from citizens right now that are still suffering PTSD from the fire, angry about some of what's going on around them. You know, I think it's really unfair. Because the uncertainty of the company and because of the potential sale, what happens in year 4, that was the old franchise pre-fire. Things are different now. And my conversations with you and my recommendation to my colleagues would be that that we just suspend the requirement of a year 4 survey. It's not fair to your company, and it's not going to tell us anything anyway, because let's say your company is acquired by another company. It's that company's performance in year 9 that's really, or year 7, whatever the current one is, that's really going to tell us what we need to know to trigger whether or not they're eligible for a franchise extension. And so my recommendation would be that we just eliminate that, take that burden off your plate. We're all trying to come home. We're all trying to get back to some sense of normal. And with COVID and everything else going on, you guys are barely, I mean, you're for sale because you don't have the customer base and it's not a profitable business right now. It's a state unfunded mandate that we provide garbage service every 7 days. So we're working on that. I mean, there's some other things I think we can do to help you guys. I know you've been losing money a lot. This is just one more thing you wouldn't have to spend money on doing. That's really going to be pointless, and I think it's going to be completely jaded. I don't think people are happy, but it's not because you guys aren't still good partners and good players. I think you're hampered by a lot of what's going on. COVID's been part of it. Trying to hire people's part of it. Our trucks, your trucks, not our truck, well, your trucks are breaking down at a higher rate because of the conditions of the road since the fire.
Yeah.
So that's an added expense that was never figured into the original franchise. So I'll shut up now. I just think that the most practical thing to do, most beneficial thing to you guys, which have been great partners to this town and continue to be, and what I want to remind my colleagues of, in talking to one of the owners of the partnership that owns Northern Recycling, their commitment is they are not ever going to file bankruptcy. They will continue to provide us garbage service until they are acquired by another company, sold, or until the franchise agreement runs out. So that's a guarantee that we've gotten from owners. So you guys aren't going anywhere. And by maybe eliminating this 4th year requirement, which won't tell us anything. If the new company is company X, Y, and Z, we need to know what their service record is like. We know what yours is like. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think Woody's suggestion is very reasonable, and I support it.
I have nothing else on it. Any card? I'm sorry, Rose?
Yeah, I just point of clarification. Are we looking at, I'm getting really bad feedback. Are we looking at postponing it for just 1 year or how many years?
There's an additional survey in year 7. So Woody's suggestion is just to eliminate it. Then the new company, assuming somebody does take over the service, would have a survey in year 7. And that would tell us whether we wanted to extend the franchise agreement for them or not.
Okay. And then the only other comment I had is it has it going below 70%, I think, and I would want to at least keep any type of a survey no less than 75%.
I think, and Andrew can clarify that, I think that in the franchise agreement, the 80 or 85% response, positive response rate is part of the existing franchise. So if we eliminate the year 4 one, and we would just have to come back, or we could give direction tonight to, if you wanted to lower that, I wouldn't lower it on year 7. I would keep it. I would keep it at what it is.
No, this was just a year 4 request, not a year 7.
Yeah, no, because whoever's doing the service, we want to make sure that our citizens are happy with them.
Correct.
Period.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So does this take a motion?
Well, any cards, Tina?
I have one card from Ward Habriel.
Thank you again. I miss Jennifer Arbuckle, I really do. I suppose if you're in the town of Paradise, you got this. It's good for 3 months. Everybody knows that. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, haven't we? But when you read, I don't know, do you read yours when you get them? It says here on the front page, this would be the front page,
things that you can throw away and things that you can recycle. Recycle constants: food and beverage cans, flattened cardboard, glass, paper, and empty aerosol cans. Well, then you turn the paper over. And on the back it says, do recycle and don't recycle. And guess what? In the don't recycle column is aerosol cans. Now, if we're going to publish documents like, not we, but they, that are incorrect, we're going to have a problem communicating with the people what to expect when they put the cans out and how to do it right. And what the problem is for the garbage company is when we put garbage in the recycle bin and recycles in the garbage bin and vice versa. We need to be sure that if we're going to do anything to educate people, it comes out exactly right. And you know, I speak from all the years that I worked as a recycling, reduce, reuse, and recycle educator in the Bay Area. You just can't do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward. No other call? Any other comments? Motion?
Do we need to make a motion? Okay. I'll make a motion that we direct staff to eliminate the requirement for a year 4 survey.
I'll second.
Before we go too far, I just want to make sure. So it was adopt the attached First Amendment. We can change that language to just strike the requirement for a year 4 survey. So we're going to modify that it's just a year 7 survey with 85% or more of the respondents with a favorable result. And then it's also to authorize the town manager to execute that First Amendment to the franchise agreement document. And then for town staff to file with the Office of the Town Clerk a fully executed copy of that.
Can we trust the town manager to do that? I just thought I would ask that.
So all those things. Okay.
All right, so the motion was by Councilmember Culleton, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Roll call vote, Councilmember Bolin is absent. Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Crowder?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6B we pulled. Item 6C, discuss and consider adopting an ordinance adding section 2.43 to the Paradise Municipal Code related to electronic filing, and this is by Dina.
I'm so excited about this one. I know, nobody gets excited about electronics, but good evening, Mayor Crowder and council members. Tonight, staff is requesting the council to introduce an ordinance that will add a section to the Paradise Municipal Code related to electronic filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest, also known as the Form 700. So Government Code 84615 authorizes a local agency to mandate electronic filing, but in order for the town of Paradise to accept electronically filed campaign statements, the town council must adopt an ordinance permitting the use of an online filing system as an option for filing. In September of 2020, the governor signed AB 2151, which went into effect on January 1st, requiring all campaign filings to be posted on the town website within 72 hours of each applicable filing deadline. Currently, filings are accepted on paper, which requires significant staff time. We have to copy, redact, post to the town website. So, and as you may remember, the election of 2020, there were 13 council candidates running for town council, which was a lot of time to scan all those documents. And also the treasurers for those campaign individuals had to file the documents too. So since we only accepted paper filings, they had to FedEx them to us. So there was a lot involved with that. If council adopts this ordinance tonight, all of that will be done electronically. So that will mean anybody who's running for office next year for election, everything will be done electronically. So it will save a tremendous amount of staff time, resources. We won't have to copy all of those papers for the filings. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And in addition, the Form 700 filings, which council members, planning commissioners, manager, legal, have to fill those out, and town council, who also sit on other committees, are required to fill those out as well. So this program will provide you the option to do that all through our system, and then it will be forwarded to the FPPC. So it will reduce a lot of individual filings. And additionally, there's a cost savings as well. NetFile has offered to provide this service to us for free through June 30th of 2020 due to COVID-19. And then the cost of that is guaranteed for the next 5 years of $3,750 annually. So staff is requesting that council consider waiving the first reading of Town Ordinance Number 613 and introduce Town Ordinance Number 613, an ordinance of the Town Council adding Section 2.43 to the Paradise Municipal Code, electronic filing of campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest relating to electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements. Are there any questions?
I have a
Yes.
couple of questions. So I've been filing the Form 700 electronically for several years.
Yes.
Using the FPPC system, and then also using Butte County's system for BCAG.
This will eliminate that.
Both of them.
Yep, you'll have to do ours, and then we can transmit it to the FPPC and to Butte County.
Yay. Yay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we pass on any charges to them?
And you're going to teach us how to use it, right?
Yes,
'Cause
NetFile will provide training to anybody who wants it, any people who are filing campaign statements, and we can provide training as well, because they're going to train us on how
Because
to use
it's
it as well.
not that easy to do.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so training will be available for anybody who would like to obtain that.
And this isn't our current IT people, is it?
No, this is NetFile. It's an outside agency that
Okay,
provides us. There's
all right,
they provide over 90% of California.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
With the campaign filings.
Any cards, Dina?
I have no cards on this item.
You have no card. There's a surprise.
I'm on a break.
I'll move approval of staff's request.
Second?
Motion by Jones, seconded by Culleton. Roll call vote. Councilmember Bolin is absent. Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Crowder?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6D, acknowledge receipt and approve the final reseeding design and scoping plan from River Partners. And this is by Brian.
Good evening, Mayor Crowder and council. So I'm here tonight to present to you the final redesign, or the final reseeding plan, the design and scoping plan that we've been working on for a while, and to provide kind of a quick summary and then get some direction from all of you on how we proceed. And so for those who are unfamiliar with the history of this plan, really quickly, we were given a grant through the Advanced Assistance System of Cal OES to develop this plan, and we went through the process, and River Partners was chosen as the firm to fulfill this project. They did this work to develop this plan to minimize erosion, to establish native vegetation that would promote resiliency and recovery while minimizing fire fuels within the town properties and right-of-ways. River Partners had a campaign of public outreach, and they included surveys and public meetings and got input. Then they partnered with experts and with community leaders, local organizations, and they developed the reseeding plan that you have before you in your council packet tonight. Really quickly, just the summary of the plan. Step one of the plan is to implement a 2-year weed control process in all the areas that would be reseeded. This would be to rid the area of invasive species while giving the future native seeds a chance at or an advantage over those invasive species that we have now. Step two, they established that about 75% of the area that what they suggest for reseeding would need the soils to be loosened, as they're compacted so hard right now that seeds would unlikely survive very long. Step three, one of the 2 seed profiles that are developed in the plan would be applied via hydro seeding, drill seeding, or simple broadcasting of the seeds upon the ground. And then step 4 would be a long-term maintenance and monitoring program to assess and guide the seeded areas, which consist of weed control, reseeding, irrigation, and long-term maintenance. And so that's the basic summary of the plan, but as we move forward and talk about implementation, that's what we really need some direction on tonight, where we want to do that and how thoroughly. We have a wide range of options on what this plan looks like in practicality. So a few concepts and a few concerns. We could implement the plan on all town right-of-ways and all town properties. The reseeding plan establishes that that's about 310 acres in total, spread out all over the city. Roadsides, vacant publicly owned properties along the trail system, etc. Some of the concerns that have been brought up by town staff is how to implement that full plan in terms of conflicts with hazardous fuel reduction goals, how to implement that plan with conflicts with standard practices for our roadside maintenance and drainage maintenance. And the other concern was that it would require extensive staff time for maintenance, as they said in the plan. We could implement the plan on selected town right-of-ways and in strategic properties in locations, and public works and the town staff could work to develop some sense of criteria to evaluate where it would be most beneficial to apply the seed plan. And where that would work best in regards to the public works and erosion and reducing fire fuel goals. We could implement the plan in a manner that really it becomes a more proactive tool for our residents within the town, that this could be really used to provide residents and private property owners with a pathway to reduce fire fuels, erosion, and reestablish native species on their property by providing these seed packets somehow through the community. Or there could be another way of implementing this that you can suggest to us tonight. And so the next steps, first is that we are asking you to acknowledge and approve the final reseeding design and scoping plan, that it's been received from River Partners as a part of our contract and as a part of our hazard mitigation grant program. And then second is to reach concurrence on next steps for how we implement this plan and what would be best for our town and our right-of-ways and our private property or in public property. So that's my presentation.
I just have there's such bad feedback. Can we, and I apologize to my fellow council members, is there a chance that we can table this till our next meeting? There's still a couple things that I want to look at on this. There were some requests that I put in initially that I don't see reflected here. So if it's possible to do that.
I believe, Mark, you said you looked today and that there isn't a firm deadline for tonight, correct?
Correct.
So it is possible we don't have a firm deadline that it has to be approved and received tonight.
I don't mind putting it off, but I have a few comments I'd like to make first.
Absolutely. Any comments you have right now would be helpful in us taking back over the next month and coming back with something else.
And this is not a personal criticism, Brian, because you were not in charge of this then, but I am so disappointed in this plan. When the idea came up, when we approved going out to bid, when we hired River Partners, I was very nervous about the term reseeding plan. Mm-hmm. And I asked at every one of those junctures, now, this isn't just seeds, is it? It's going to be shrubs and trees. We're not going to just put seeds on the bike path. We're going to replant trees, right? And I was told, yes, it would include shrubs and trees. There's no shrubs and trees in there. None. All it is seeds. And it's mostly going to just be dry grasses and I don't know what. I'm really disappointed. It's not what I wanted to see in town. But I was wondering, the getting rid of invasive species is a good part of the plan, and is it possible to implement only that part and not the rest?
That'd be a question I'd be happy to get further input from River Partners on. I know getting rid of the invasive species was a much more, had a much higher level of mechanical work, if you will, that we actually have to go in and pull those things out and really, like they said, there needs to be 2 years of work to get rid of those invasive species before you get to the reseeding.
And I think we need to do those even if we don't do the reseeding. So
Yes.
if we bring this back, I'd like to know the answer to that question.
Great.
So I agree with Councilmember Jones on what you said. I think the other part about this is I've reached out to the Garden Club and also to Parks and Recreation about doing a program that attracts pollinators to the town of Paradise, specifically looking at attracting monarch butterflies and maybe having some type of ecotourism if we can get a good population of monarchs in the area. And I don't see that reflected here. The other part about that, it looks like they still want to do spraying, which would be potentially harmful to some of our pollinators. And so those are the type of things that I would like to look at and see if we can't come back with a more broadened scope.
Happy to address that. Thank you.
And then I have one question. I was kind of told with the majority of our right-of-ways that the thought process was to keep that bare to dirt and control with herbicides, what have you. And on right-of-ways where there's an extreme slope and problems with erosion, that part would be reseeded. Is that what we're reflecting in?
I think the report really, as it stands right now, is really including all right-of-ways. And so that's where, as we seek guidance to how we implement this, it would be working with all of you and your suggestions and with Mark and his Public Works team in terms of, what works best and where.
Well, okay, then I would like to include that in as my suggestion.
Yeah. So to specify that in the plan.
Please.
Okay.
I thought this thing was like a trip. It was, there's some areas like on Pearson where there's hill banks there by the College Hill that are going to have to be seeded for erosion. Mm-hmm. What we currently do for the bike path, for town road right-of-ways, we spray with Roundup or some herbicide. We kill the weeds. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. We don't have enough people or money to mow them. I don't know. This was just like to Jody's comment. I agree. Reseeding is like, where's the bushes? Where's the trees? Where's the shrubs? We can't even get rid of the Scotch broom that's way huge overloaded. Mm-hmm. Not so much on our public right-of-ways, but on private properties. So, it's a great effort. I don't have any problem saying, hey, yeah, we got your report. You earned your money, but I don't see how we're going to implement this. Mm-hmm. Where are we going to get the money to do this? Mm-hmm. Who's going to pay for that? And then the long-term thing, that's the part that I read that I found really offensive. We have a public works crew with 5 people, and we're going to go take care of all of these public lands with all of this maintenance. This is a great deal if you have a community of, if you have 100 personnel volunteer corps. If River Partners want to do it for free, I don't know. It's one of those pie in the sky ideas. Yeah, should we reseed those areas? Yes, we absolutely should put stuff back. But I don't know, man. I agree. Let's table this. You guys can go talk about it. For me, it would be helpful to hear what does the staff really think about what part of this could really be implemented, instead of asking me to give. Because when I read this, I thought we can't do any of this. I don't. I couldn't even fathom what the price tag would be. That's my 2 cents.
So do we, oh, you have a card?
I have one card from John Ramalia.
Good evening, Council. As most of you know, we reopened our vegetation management business this year to try and help ourselves and the community try and keep up with the weed problems. One thing that we have had a major learning experience in the last month and a half is it is so dry, and the grasses of choice for the deer are gone. We have treated close to 275 acres in town, and one of our procedures was to trim these oak bushes back to 1 or 2 sprouts to try and basically regenerate the trees. What we have found in the last 3 weeks is the deer are girdling the trees. They're taking all the bark off of them from the ground to probably 18 inches up. The chances of survival of those are slim to none. If we, at this time, until we get a major climate change, if we start planting things and not fencing them off, it's going to be deer feed. And I just experienced this and realized what was going on in the last 2 weeks. The maintenance would be atrocious with the native species because most of your herbicides of choice are basically either everything, such as Roundup, woodsy plants, such as Scotch broom, oak trees, Garland 4 or Ultra 4, and it's very difficult to get the right blend. We have a contractor we use that is doing pretty good right now, but I severely think that we should take from the standpoint of what is suggested to plant, make sure that somebody locally, one of the nurseries, has those stock or have them available to bring in, and leave it up to the property owners. This would be an extensive expense to try and, not just to do the public properties, but to try and maintain them. And we've all seen it with the fuel breaks. Fire Safe Council and everybody else comes in and spends a bunch of money and they look great. And 2 years later, because there's no continuous funding to keep them cleaned, it's totally overgrown again. And I don't want to see that happen with a program like this. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to put this off, or?
Do we need it?
Okay.
So just, as
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. We'll just put this off for another meeting.
How about 2027? And my microphone was off good. Just kidding, Brian.
That's okay. No, I think there's a pragmatic and there's a pragmatic solution out there for this, and I think if we have some more time, I think we can get to something that will be beneficial with your input and with working with river partners and our staff team. So.
It would be really helpful in trying to, I think, for me at least, would be if staff came back with, whether you do it through these folks, whether they're part of the grant or anything, it would be nice to look at some of our real roadways, like College Hill, or some of the other areas of town that are publicly owned. Okay, what's the plan to reseed that? Are there going to be bushes there, or are you going to hydroseed that? You know, or, I mean, to really have some idea, you know, and maybe even some options, and what the costs might be. So, I mean, for me to approve something, I got to have an idea of what that something is.
Absolutely.
And this was just a lot of scientific data, which is above my pay grade.
So what is your thought process, Brian, of how long to put something together before we bring it back? The next council meeting, the one after?
I don't think there's any issue with November. What do you think, Mark? No. Yep, yeah. I think November would be fine.
Okay, so we'll bring this back on the November council meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Unless there's too many items, and then we'll
Yeah.
move it out.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of the one.
Thank you, council.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Okay. Item 6E, consider awarding the contract for Community Long-Term Recovery Plan 3-year update to Urban Design Associates. And this will be talked about by Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Council, Mayor. We're bringing forward this opportunity for us to re-engage UDA on the long-term recovery plan update. So a little bit of the background following the 2018 Campfire. The town of Paradise was gifted through the North Valley Community Foundation and the Butte Strong Fund the long-term recovery plan. The approximate value of that plan was about $450,000. This was started on February 22, 2019, with a kickoff meeting that asked the citizens 3 questions. What are Paradise strengths before and after the Campfire? What are Paradise's weaknesses before and after the Campfire? What are Paradise's opportunities as a result of the disaster? The town then hosted 3 additional meetings in March that were drop-in open houses for the community to engage. And then in April of 2019, the planning team hosted a community workshop which included 3 meetings. The first was a presentation on April 16th of the initial findings from the first 3 listening sessions and online surveys. After that, the UDA presented the final document and presented that at a special town council meeting on May 22nd. And then June 25th, 2019, the final long-term recovery plan was adopted. And what did that long-term recovery plan state? It had kind of 5 different categories for the town, which were safer, welcoming, stronger, better, greener. And there was a lot of different subcategories to each one of those. This was basically the guidebook for the town staff to move forward with recovery. And through that, we have done a tremendous amount of work of creating projects, developing projects, completing projects that met each one of these different subcategories in the long-term recovery plan. But the problem is most of that is undocumented in one specific document. So there's documentation of all this kind of success through the long-term recovery plan, but it's not held in one complete document. So with that and the 3-year plan moving forward, we felt that it was appropriate at this point in time to reach out to UDA to see what it would cost to get an update for the community. And so with that, we have created a scope of work that they have listed, which the step 1 would be a listening to the town. So town employees and to the council members about where they see the vision moving forward. We do have 2 new council members on board. This would be their first time engaging from their seats about their visioning of where it's going. Listening to stakeholders. We envision that happening around November, December for about a 2-month process. Then after the holidays, we would have a listening to the community. So this would take into consideration community engagement process like the confirmation, looking at surveys, community meetings that are virtual, and then an open house that would be in person. So allowing people back into those in-person meetings to give their input to recategorize or actually bring up new projects that are very important to them. And then after that would be then documentation, which would be documenting the new projects, but also documenting the successes that the town has had through this process. My personal opinion is it's an opportunity not only to add projects to this list to leverage through grant processes, which Mark can speak about, but also it's an opportunity for us to communicate to our citizens out there about what the town is moving forward, what they've done, but also what we are looking forward to into the future. So with that, I will take any questions.
I have a question. So would this be similar with the in-person like we did at CMA with the tables and the charts and?
So there would be one in-person meeting that I believe would have that same engagement where it would be the open house style engagement. But with that, there would also be, before that even happened, there would be online surveys that would take into consideration from the community. And we've seen a really high result of online surveys coming back from our community members that they're engaging with those. And then there would also be a virtual meeting before that open house also to engage.
Kevin, do you think we'll get an answer about the implementation money for the early warning system before we do this? I mean, that is a project that the town really wants. We can't, we can show we did a plan, but no one cares about that. They care about, have we built the system or not?
That is a great question. I think Mark can update you actually of what we've heard as of 2 hours ago.
Yeah. All right. Good evening, Council. So the question I understand was, what's the status of the early warning system project, which we've been communicating as the top priority that came out of the long-term recovery plan. So we have been coordinating more frequently with FEMA and Cal OES on these projects, and FEMA has informed us that they are leading a full environmental assessment under the National Environmental Policy Act, so NEPA. So the EA process has begun. It is frustrating. We have communicated that frustration on your behalf in advance.
Thank you.
And we disagree. We've stated we've disagreed. And they're moving forward very expeditiously on that process. Concurrently, the town is looking into our own CEQA efforts to catch up as far as the requirements for construction. With that said, we've recently received a few RFIs on the project, requests for information. We've been able to answer their questions even today. We're able to transmit information that we received from PG&E about each individual of the 21 tower locations, how long of our electrical service trenching that we're going to see, and what type of impacts that level of trenching could involve for the project. So with all of this in mind, I wish I had a crystal ball to say we will be constructing the early warning system by spring of next year. I can't say that with certainty, but I think that's a really good goal. The application for construction has been under consideration and review, probably since January or February of this year. We've been pushing and pushing and pushing, no matter who's doing that pushing. And what we've been hearing is a lot of feedback from FEMA and understanding that the project is a priority, but there is a national priorities and objectives that FEMA as a whole is trying to accomplish and manage these application reviews, and that the delays that we've had aren't uncommon for their standards. So that's disappointing and frustrating, but we will continue to move forward. As it relates to the long-term recovery plan and tie back to the item, is anytime we have the opportunity to reinforce that, and even I see an opportunity to engage FEMA and Cal OES in the redevelopment of an update of the long-term recovery plan, is to really speak the truth for today. 3 years ago, only a couple of months removed from the fire, there was a lot of different issues and priorities going on. This one is consistent, but when we look across the entire town in the recovery, there's so much that has changed, and it's an opportunity for us to communicate those changes and sometimes lack of changes to FEMA and Cal OES and the funding partners that are considering these projects.
So the reason I asked my question, I don't care so much about what Cal OES and FEMA think, but if we're going to engage in another planning exercise, we need to be able to show real progress to our people, our residents. We can show that the town has applied for lots of things, and we've gotten money to do plans, to do things that the community wanted us to do. But other than tree removal, I guess we do have the money for the roads, but we haven't started the projects yet. So for our residents to actually see the results of all of our work is very hard. I'm not sure about the timing of this plan, because I don't think we're far enough along. I'd like to be able to say to them, we've got the early warning system, the roads are beginning to be constructed, and now where do you want to go? I think this is $100,000. I'd rather see that money go toward implementation of something than planning at this point. This might be a really good thing to do in a year, maybe 2 years, but I don't think it is right now, unless we need to add a project in order to be able to qualify for a grant. And if that's not the case, I think we should put this off.
Yeah, so I'd love to speak to that just for a few seconds, if that's all right. When it comes to grant applications and putting projects together, the more documentation, the more public participation, the better. I looked at the long-term recovery plan and the number of projects that were listed in there, and I get filled with such pride and joy about the progress, not just from the town, but also community-wide, Paradise Unified, and the different recovery partners, our own utilities, and the progress that we're making towards achieving these goals. And I think also you can see some gaps, healthcare, and other different community issues that are high priority moving forward. But when it comes to tying these projects back to a public engagement process and making sure that they remain competitive, because in my opinion, we're heading towards this drop-off on how recent the fire was and as far as the projects that are going to really speak to that were created for the town of Paradise and communities like us. And so we have to keep that competitive edge, and documenting that and providing updates on these projects, I think, is a very valuable point at this point in time, because so much project has been made, and this could help us communicate that both with our community and potential funding partners moving forward. When it comes to the transportation items, even this last week, we had actually some good news from FHWA and headquarters on a allocation of $16 million additionally for our road rehab project. So we're almost to $100 million secured, and staff is preparing a plan to repave every road over the next 3 to 5 years. And so we can document that while it's not today. We're not paving today because we're trying to coordinate neighborhoods at a time. We can communicate that and document it in this update. And I think that type of documentation can occur across many projects, not just roads, not just the early warning system, hazard tree removal. When I take a step back and look at the overall document itself, I have to believe we've leveraged hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars coming back to Paradise because of the engagement process that we did immediately in response to the fire. And the more we can keep that documentation relevant and recent is a great opportunity for both public participation and then us communicating as kind of a marketing to our recovery partners and the community itself.
So you're saying you think now is the right time?
I do believe so, just because we are, if you're asking, and you did, because we are leading a nationally watched recovery that's never been done before. We have so much progress. We have so much to be proud of. We have lessons that we've learned. And I think it's partially our responsibility to document that and keep it moving forward and keep that momentum. I think our population has changed and we have different needs than we did. And now maybe there's new projects, maybe there's ones that aren't as important that can drop off the list. And there's going to be some that are just done. And so the more again, putting my public works hat on, the more I can see those road projects that have been communicated to us as a priority through the transportation master plan, through all the public outreach, if we can consolidate that, and the more times it comes up in the supporting documentation we submit in these applications, our funding partners see that and they go, okay, this is an important project to the community. They've done a meaningful public outreach process, and this is something I can score highly for that. Active transportation, one of the programs that we've had success early on, but the more competitive it's gotten over the years as it's developed, is what are you doing for public engagement and how frequent is it? The survey isn't enough just on its own. I want to see you at Johnny Appleseed days and doing stickers on the dots and getting that public feedback, and going to grocery stores or having pop-up engagement events. So with all of that considered, I'm only thinking from the lens of transportation, but I know that helps amongst all of the different sectors of recovery for Paradise. So again, I believe the time is now due to the progress that we've made and the things that are certain that we can document and stick to as far as a schedule and implementation. And then I wouldn't rule out doing it again in 2 to 3, 5 years after that, because we know this recovery is going to be 10, 20 years ahead of us, and different communities are going through, whether it's flooding, fires, hurricanes, about what recovery looks like. And I think documenting this in the recovery plan helps us be that model for the rest of the country.
Can I just chime in real quick? Sorry to cut you off. And I agree with you. It's difficult to come to a community and say, look at all we've done, and they go, well, you haven't done anything. And that's the communication gap that we're finding with our community stakeholders, is they're looking out and saying, well, I don't see anything in the ground. I don't see any roads repaved. I think this document would tell the story about how much has been done, even though you're not seeing the actual construction done, because it does take so long. And there is so much of a planning documents and planning that goes on. We were in a community meeting, 2 weeks ago, and one of the comments was, why can't you just do it? Just do everything all at once. Get one contractor and do everything. And we would love to. That would be great. It's just not the way that that things are handled. And we know the environmental documents behind most of these projects take a long portion of time, and it's very hard for the public to understand how much effort goes into these environmental documents behind the scenes. But it does show that there's this progress being made, and that we're communicating that out to our public in one concise document.
So I agree with Jody, and I hear all of this stuff. But just like tonight, we were told back here 3 years ago, oh yeah, and oh gee, PG&E's going to underground all the telephone poles, and that's going to take 5 years, and we got the money a year ago or 6 months ago for the roads, but we're going to wait till that's done. And now you're saying tonight that in 3 to 5 years before that'll start being done neighborhood to neighborhood. Now I hope that that's going to happen sooner than that.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, everything, we were told one thing 3 years ago, and the part I agree with is if we're going to spend $100,000, how much does it cost to put up one tower? Because, I mean, let's put one up. If we're going to spend this money that we were given on surveyed, and I get the whole idea of how it leverages and all that, I understand that. I have a better understanding than maybe the average citizen does about how that stuff works. Doesn't mean I agree with it, I'm not opposed to doing this, because I'm one of the people that thinks that the community that's living here now is not the community that put the little green and red dots on all those posters back in 3 years ago. So I would really like to hear what they say. But Jody's point's really valid, and what you guys are hearing, that's what I'm hearing, and I'm sure my colleagues are hearing the same thing. The stuff hasn't been, and the roads aren't fixed, the towers haven't been built. It was a top priority, and we've been threatened by fire a couple of times. Why don't we put up one? If maybe we can't get reimbursed, maybe we lose the grant. I mean, everything is based on somebody else giving us the money to do it. At some point, it's our responsibility to do it with whatever money we have. If we can only build one tower, let's put one tower up, and keep working on them. Got 22 towers. I mean, they're all going to be downtown. It was crazy where you guys put them, but that's a different issue.
Okay, there's 21 towers.
I'm not against this idea, and I have great respect for Barry and his crew. I think they did a masterful job of facilitating that effort. I look forward to working with them again to find out what the flavor of the community is. But Jody's point's well taken. Mm-hmm. We're going to spend $100,000 to explain to people why we can't why things aren't done. I mean,
yeah.
Nobody knows what EIR is, and the massive amount, government is that way. It complicates the simplest, most common sense things. There's layers of bureaucracy and paperwork, which and the average citizen isn't aware of that. But if we're going to get that government money, we got to get it. And the other point I wanted to make was, when you made the point about, the dropping off point of we were this national image, and that was part of my concern before, right after the fire. I think we have tremendous leverage ability, even now 3 years later. And what's happened to us is they cleaned up my foundation. They left all the dead trees, 14 of them in my yard. What they're doing in Berry Creek and what they're going to do in Greenville is they're cleaning up the foundation, they're taking the dead trees. Mm-hmm. And they're still marketable, and they're all made sense. They learned that from us. Mm-hmm. We're still stuck with 30,000 dead trees on private property. Mm-hmm. We still have issues, mm-hmm. and yet a lot of those people and funders are gone. So I still think we have credibility. What happened to us first, and it's happening to other people now that gives us, I think, even more credibility. So we can keep beating the drum, and I admire your expertise, and I hear what you're telling me, and I believe it to be true. You know, it's a bitter pill. I don't want to agree with you if that's in fact the only way for us to get to that money, but I think that we owe the citizens a way to get to at least one tower as soon as we can.
Well, so when it comes to doing one tower, so the project as a whole has, it's 21 towers so that every resident in Paradise can hear what we're saying. That's the goal, and one tower is not going to get the job done.
I understand, Mark.
Okay,
I understand, but that's based on, that whole plan was developed based on what we were. 26,000 people, 12,000 residences and businesses. That's what it was based on.
But we still have the same 18 square
We
miles.
have the same
Yep.
pieces of property, and most of them are empty.
18 square miles. That's still the same, and we have to be able to hear it. But with that, I think you make some great points. Our direction has been on the early warning system to go through the hazard mitigation grant program. We're asking for $3 million of federal money to implement and commit to the project.
Yeah, and I'll just dovetail on that is, and it's hard to hear, but we are making progress. We know this is the number one priority. We are pushing and pushing and pushing, and we feel like the state finally realizes that they're supporting us in that push too. So Cal OES is supporting us in that push. We have a lot of momentum moving in that direction at this point in time, and we know that we have not brought this project as quickly as we would like to do that. But it is a $3 million grant that is from FEMA that has specific requirements, but we do feel like it's not the time to abandon that process because there's still a lot of momentum moving in that direction.
Correct.
But to Jody's point again, I'm sorry, Jody, but her point again, though, is how do we go, and I'm going to say this as plain as I can, how do we go back to the public and say, oh, believe us? You know, here's what we told you 3 years ago. It hasn't materialized, and we can explain all the back room, what's going on and everything. But how do we expect them to believe us? Like, hang in there. We got momentum. I mean, you know, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell. And I mean, if we want to have that meeting, okay, I'll show up.
Yeah.
I had one other concern, and I hear what you're saying, Mark, and perhaps you're right that we do need to do this now. I don't like the proposal that it's funded out of additional PG&E monies. And I did have a conversation with Kevin about funding it from savings in the budget, which he thinks he could do, and it would be a lot easier for me to swallow if the proposal was changed to say that.
Okay.
Okay, who's not getting paid?
We are seeing an increase in certain revenues that throughout the town that we possibly could. I don't think it's an expense cutting. I think that there's probably some excess revenue in there, but I would have to really delve in with Ross, and then we could. I hate tabling everything this month, but if that's the desire of the council to see that move forward in that direction, I think I would work with Ross to make sure that there was that availability so that it was clear in the budget.
Couldn't we pass it contingent on that, and then you don't
Sure.
have to bring it back?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have a question, just if I could. First question is, what is our time for implementing this? Like, how far off are we looking at this point?
Can we speak to that? So, Rose, okay, you can hear me. So if council did proceed, we believe that we could have a 3-year document ready for adoption early spring, early next year. The idea was that we could get started on it very soon in November. And obviously with the holidays and kind of the weather's not going to be very conducive for outdoor open house or outdoor event if that was scheduled. So, but I think their initial target was early next year. This wouldn't be a long prolonged process. we would get to work very quickly, start with those stakeholder interviews and start the documentation process, and then be able to come forward with the public to show the progress, get their feedback, and see that barometer. If they're not happy, or if they are happy, they can have that opportunity to help us prioritize and communicate that further.
So I think the other thing about this is I remember going through the all of the boards and everything at the church when we were doing the initial planning. And I will say, even looking back on it now, for me, there are probably things that I would have answered differently. And I do think a lot of our citizens are frustrated, and this might very well give them another option to participate, which would help in, allowing them to have their voice too. I think the other thing apart, I do agree with Jody. It does feel like it's really soon, and that maybe we need a little bit more time before we do this again. But I do understand that there are, some requirements that we have for our grants. And when I talked to Kevin about this earlier, I was also concerned about the money coming out of our general fund. And I was wondering if maybe there were some grants that were available that we could also use to fund this.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can definitely look into partnership with grants or with other foundations out there that might be willing to help with this. We can definitely go in that direction.
Otherwise, I'm fine with moving forward with it. I understand the kind of the urgency in a sense behind it, and I think it's important to give our residents some buy-in in what we're doing.
And I would agree with moving forward with the contingency that we can find money to do it other than the PG&E money. And, I do think, at least like as far as our roads go, I think the citizens understand we don't want to do that until the undergrounding's done, because there's nothing more frustrating to people to watch a new street get paved and 3 months later to have it torn up again to do something that should have been done prior to. The alert sirens, I'm definitely hearing the same thing, and we keep coming back for updates, and we say, well, maybe at the end of this quarter, and it's, tomorrow never comes. So it is getting tough to keep telling people this, and people are starting to lose faith that it's going to happen. So we really do. I mean, God knows I don't know that there's a town that's ever done as many environmental impact studies as this town has. And I mean, with everything we do, we seem to do another one, even though we just finished one. So I don't know. I'd like to see that go a little quicker, and the money that's being spent on that could be contributed to this. I mean, it's just, we do have to make some progress and get some definite answers, so.
Are there cards? Yeah, no cards. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve this item contingent on the town manager finding another source of funds other than the PG&E monies.
I'll second.
Motion by Jones, seconded by Crowder. Roll call vote. Councilmember Bolin is absent. Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Crowder?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7A, council-initiated agenda items. Discuss ordinance number 609 relating to defensible space and hazardous fuel management. Councilman Culleton.
Hi, everybody. Hey, the reason I had this put on there was just to talk about it. When we pass this thing, our weed ordinance and all that stuff, my concern is this. I think we can either be proactive or reactive, and currently we are being reactive. So when we passed this, and Garrett gave us the new state fire marshal's mandate, Assembly Bill 38, I guess it was. In there, it says that, and I believe you're on screen, so I believe we're in a high fire zone or an LRA or SRA. So what the law actually says is that the law requires, which is California Civil Code, Section 1102.19, requires a seller of real property located in where we're located to provide the buyer with documentation stating that the property is in compliance with the requirements of the Public Resource Code 4291 or local vegetation management ordinances, which we have for properties within the jurisdiction. The law also requires that if documentation demonstrating compliance cannot be obtained by the close of escrow, a written agreement showing that the buyer agrees to obtain documentation of compliance will be within 1 year of close of escrow. But the law requires that the buyer provide documentation. And currently what happens is, if I sell my lot, the town has no way of knowing I've sold my lot until sometime after escrow closes, the title's been registered with the county, and maybe a week, 6 weeks, 3 months later, the town will get some notice that there's a new owner. In the meantime, if that property is out of compliance with our local weed ordinance, there's nothing being done by the real estate industry or the buyers and sellers or the title companies to satisfy this law, you know. And so I looked around and I found some other jurisdictions that they have a request for defensible space inspection. So they actually, what happens, I brought samples and I'll pass them out if you want them. What currently the insurance company, all that we are requiring is that they do that second piece. They just have this multi-page document that is put in a bunch of documents that the people have to sign. And so it just says, hey, you know what, within a year you got to do that. So in the meantime, if your home is newly built and there's an empty lot full of Scotch broom next to you, you know, the only way you can deal with that is to call code enforcement, file a complaint. Now the town is on the hook and taxpayers on the hook. We have to pay somebody to go out there and look at it. We have to pay somebody to write a letter. We have to pay legal to write letters once it gets to a fine and an abatement process. And it's all reactive. And that's because we've chosen, and the real estate industry has chosen to simply include this document or a similar legal document in the packet that people sign, and saying because if there is no a written agreement showing that the buyer has, and the law requires in the language of the law that the seller must provide the buyer with documentation stating the property is in compliance with local weed ordinances. We're not requiring that. And all I'm asking for is that maybe we should look at a way to require the sale of a property in our town to get an inspection. And that could be simply, if you look in the records and the property was inspected last month by the fire department, you issue a price. Maybe it'll cost you $25. I don't know how the details work out, but I'm suggesting this because what's going to happen is once people get their PG&E settlement, properties are going to sell, and they're already selling like hotcakes. I have an email from a property owner in town, rebuilt his home right after the fire. Somebody in Santa Rosa bought the lot next to him. It's overgrown, it's out of compliance. He said multiple letters. They've got letters from town. We send letters to people that don't respond. We don't know where the owners have moved to or what. And so we end up having to do an enforcement thing. This to me is if we just found a way to just enforce the law, make everybody that's selling property abide by the law and require them to come to the town and get a document that says, yeah, your property's clear or not. So maybe Tony or the fire marshal has to drive by and look at it, or we'll buy him a drone and let him fly over it and look at it, you know? But I mean, just saying it, it's pretty simple. And I believe if we directed staff to look into how to develop it, you know, and here, by the way, is, if you want these, it's copies of stuff. Rose, I'll send you one. If you guys, one is the form that Woodside Fire District uses. The other side is all that's required by the thing. Now, Woodside Fire District, you know, that's Woodside, they require a lot of money to do the inspection. You know, talking to code enforcement, I mean, it's a pretty minimal, it could be a minimal charge. And yes, it puts something on the seller, but this is something then that is negotiated between the buyer and seller. If it costs you $1,500 to clean a completely overgrown half-acre or 1-acre lot, then that's something they negotiate at the point of sale. I want to get the weeds gone before the property's titled, so I don't have to send code enforcement out of there. You know, if the new owner lets it overgrow again, then we got a new problem. But right now, these properties are selling all over town, and they're going to increase once people get their settlement money back, and we don't have any way of even knowing about it. So that's why I brought it up for discussion. That's it. That's my pitch. I would like to be proactive instead of reactive, and I think we can do it. And I know there are realtors and people that will not agree to it. There are probably sellers of property that don't agree to it. To me, when I became a property owner, with ownership of property goes responsibility. And in a community, in our municipality, we have a responsibility, and we actually have ordinance that require that I maintain that property in a fire-safe condition. And we have too many properties that are out of compliance, and we have no tools short of enforcement to go deal with it. This is a real simple way to help fix that. That's my pitch.
Chief, would you like to weigh in here?
Sure. Thank you, council members, mayor this evening, and Mr. Lindsay, I believe, is in the crowd, so he'll follow up on any of the code enforcement numbers. But from the fire defensible space process that we've developed here for the town, I look at this as in totality, not only to the issue that you guys are bringing up here tonight, but in whole. And really, the goal when we started this process was to inspect all 11,000 plus parcels every year through our fire prevention program. And really, that was been done by one inspector with the assistance of the SAFER grant additional firefighters. We'll have that assistance from those firefighters until that grant runs out in 2023. There's been some movement approved by the council to help out Mr. Lindsay's shop to increase some capacity in his shop to better address and more quickly address the inspection process as we do in the spring, to visit every parcel out there and give them a notice of compliance or non-compliance and move down the avenues that are in place to the town to get those properties corrected. So last time this subject came up, there was roughly 30 transactions a month for those properties within the town of Paradise. I would say that it is an impact on the inspection process. It is something that I think is important. It is currently in our codes. However, I don't think it's something to solely focus on correcting the problem. I think the problem is education, enforcement, and quite frankly, neighbors that maybe have undesirable neighbors next to them, talking and engaging with them to clean up their properties, and that's how we're going to get the town to where we want it to be. I don't ever expect it will be at 100%, but we're sure going to try to get to that point. And Mr. Lindsay, I'd open the floor up to you to talk about some of your compliance and things going on.
Good evening, council. So we do currently have inspected all 11,000 lots, and we're currently in the enforcement stage of compliance. And we have received approximately 60-70% of compliance, and we have many that are out, and we're doing that involves multiple inspections. So when we do our first round inspection, we go around, then we do a second one, and then we do a code compliance one, and then those are being kicked to code enforcement, and citations are going out to issuance. This is a state, we did adopt this in the municipal code, and again, it reflects on another enforcement. We have to enforce this, so any way we either do it like we do a clearance to record, like we do for septic systems. We could produce that kind of a scenario where we have to inspect every escrow, every property that's in escrow. There is a cost for that, and certainly then in staffing, and we can certainly bring that up if that's the will of council to go in that direction. That's not really all I have.
So that would be, my question is the staffing issue. Is that something that if we initiated with our current staff, could we accomplish this?
That would have to be evaluated, right? If we figure, I had a different number of, monthly stats of 57 transactions a month. That would equate to approximately, if you did the inspections of each one, about 25% of a staff member, right? Their fees, because you need the time to, it's like you're fielding the call, fielding the requests, creating the requests, creating the documents, actually going out and doing the inspection. And if you acquire those, what do I have here? I did a quick note of how many. It would say we did 57 a month, that'd be 684 annually. It would take approximately 567 staff hours to produce those. And that's simply put, I mean, you're looking at, the amount of time, drive there and back, and paperwork. And it is limited. I think I had it at like 35 minutes per inspection, right? If you actually had to go out and do it. And there is a cost for doing that service, and that would have to be recovered. And just doing round notes, you're looking at about $60 for staff recovery, just to recover for that. And that staff member, again, about a quarter of their staff time would be just doing these types of inspections. We are bringing an additional staff member on for fire prevention, but that would, then consume that person. Then we're looking to get the extra help to do the other prevention activities that we have.
Okay, I got a question.
Sure.
Okay, that's reasonable. So, and let's say it's $60. The point, let me ask you this, though. For the non-compliant property that changes hands, the vacant lots that are out there that are overgrown with Scotch broom, I don't know how many of those there are. You guys might have that number somewhere. But for those, what is the cost to bring those into compliance? What is the average cost to issue a citation, do the inspections, multiple inspections, write the letter, write the citation, follow up to get compliance?
Good question.
More than 500 hours a year.
I'd have to crunch those.
I mean, it's a bunch, and that's my point. This, I didn't think this is it's not something that doesn't have a cost associated with it, and the cost would be borne by the seller or the buyer. I mean, that would be part of what they would have, just like on a septic inspection. And I was thinking erroneously that, gee, well, we would know when a property transfers title because we'll know who the new owner is because they have to get that septic thing to file the title. Well, no, that's only when you get a building permit. You can sell your land without having anything, So we may not know for months. So in the meantime, now I have a property that's getting further into compliance. To me, even though there are some people that will object to this will give you guys a tool. Yes, you'll be able to recover the staff time, whatever the cost associated. We do a real-time study and cost analysis. Whatever they are will be passed on to the seller buyer, and it's something they can negotiate. To me, it just gives us a tool. It might if it gets 10 lots cleared at the point of sale without having to go to enforcement after the sale, a year later, I just think that's a win-win. I think that's proactive. And I think the other way, because the cost of compliance through enforcement is much higher than the minimal cost of making somebody fill out a request for an inspection, having you drive out there or look at the drone or look at the data. Sure. I mean, you may have the data already. You might be able to pull it up on the AP number on a computer. Yeah, we inspected them the middle of last month. They're clear. And so then we issue a little certificate saying here, and then they can go to the county and record it. That's all I'm suggesting. And, I'm not going to die on the sword for this one. I just think that it makes sense to let the law be, and I hear what Garrett's saying, and we've been educating people, Garrett, on fire safety for years, and it's just, it works, but it works really slow. It doesn't solve the problem, I mean, I'll forward you the email from the person that lives on Little Grand Canyon that has a neighbor in Santa Rosa that ignores the registered letters, ignores code enforcement.
Correct.
And it's just, so, I mean, it's a great idea, and I don't think we shouldn't try those things. But this is just one more tool I have brought up for discussion because I think it would be an aid to code enforcement and getting our community back, so.
Can I give a little history here? I think this is the 4th time we've had this discussion. The first time it came before the council, it was to do exactly what you're proposing. We had this room filled with the realtors who opposed it, and we didn't have the votes on council, and it didn't pass. I don't know if we have the votes on council now. I was in favor of it then. I agree with you. We have a leveraging tool. Lots of lots are going to sell. We can use this to make people clean them up before they transfer them. And if they want to sell it, they're going to do it, even if we're trying to just do our annual inspections and chase them down, they can just ignore us. So I think it's a good thing, but we've tried it before and it went nowhere.
We did try it before, and actually it went somewhere. I thought, because my recollection, we didn't have the realtors in the room, but boy, after we passed it, we sure had the calls and the pushback, and we backed off, and I supported it at that time too. And I tend to agree with you and Woody. Yeah, it's more work for everybody, but if it makes us more fire safe, I think it's something that we should do. We'll charge just like we do for a septic inspection, whatever it costs, where we do the costs, and we're going to get pushback, I'm sure, from the realtors. But again, we all live here, and I'm here in the weeds constantly, and I'm hearing we're not doing it fast enough. So any tool that we can to accelerate our process of cleaning it, I think I have to support.
Does Rose want to say something?
Yeah, I agree. I don't agree that we should choose whether it's the buyer or the seller that pays. I think that's part of their negotiation process, like a septic inspection or anything else. And then I think we should charge for it, and that would be part of this negotiated sale of the property, as to who pays for that charge, and that there needs to be a clearance done before the property is sold. I don't know what the teeth are in this and how we can make that happen or ensure it's going to happen. And not to throw a monkey wrench in it, but the other issue that's coming up in the sale of properties is not knowing where the boundaries are in the properties. So another thing that we might want to look at down the road is the same thing for, property surveys. Do we want a solid property survey before a lot is sold?
Yeah, separate discussion.
Yeah.
The teeth for this is that the title insurance companies that process the escrows have to agree to require it and not close escrow unless they get it.
And they do that with our septic.
Right.
Unless out-of-town title companies that aren't familiar, which is a problem we run into.
Right.
But I think where the teeth are in this actual code, 1102.19, it requires a seller of real property located in an SRA, which we are, to provide the buyer with documentation stating, and so we just create a request for an inspection, and we can issue a 8.5 by 11 certificates, or half a page, so we get 2 out of a paper. But, you know what I mean? I mean, that's something staff can figure out how to do, but I think that the teeth are in the law, and we just amend our ordinance to adopt this form, or, you know, this process. You guys can develop the process and figure out what the cost and the fee would be and bring it back to us. I think it'll give us a tool You know, that's where I'm at.
So I'm in favor of doing it. So we are doing it at the standard of what our weed abatement is. Are we also including hazardous trees in it?
No. I don't think that the state thing addresses that. This is mainly for weed abatement, for fire-safe things. Is that right, Chief?
Yeah, it would be under the Defensible Space Hazardous Fuel Management Requirements section 8.58.060. Those would be the requirements.
Okay.
If there's a hazard tree within those certain distances that needs to be removed because of fire safety, then it would include it, but it wouldn't include just hazard trees on the property as a general.
Right. What do we do?
Tony, I'm thinking kind of like Woody in the long run, it might even save time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we could develop a process very similar. We kind of have a boilerplate already with the septic clearances. And we'll run with that and develop a process, come back with a, kind of a cost analysis of what it would be and working with legal.
We would want us to draft an ordinance that incorporates the state law, puts some local teeth in it.
Right.
And adopts the form, approves the whole process.
Go to the microphone, please. Go to the microphone, please.
Yeah, you have to get a microphone.
So you'd want to have an ordinance adopted. You'd want us to draft an ordinance that incorporates state law, makes it applicable here, utilizing a local process, outlining what that process is, including some teeth in it, some enforcement mechanisms in that ordinance, and then it would need to come to council for consideration as an ordinance, like any other ordinance, and once it passes, then it would be in place.
And Scott, on that, would we bring back the charge associated with the inspection on that also?
Yeah, you would, let me ask you a question. When we adopt fees, do we have a master fee schedule that's adopted once a year? Yes. Okay, so you would want to adopt the fee and then direct staff to incorporate that fee into the master fee schedule.
As all part of the same
Yeah.
action item.
Yeah, you would.
Okay. Dina has a card.
Yeah.
I have a card from Ward Habriel.
Thank you. You know, my history here, I don't know what, 15, 16 years? I would love to have positive things to say when I come up here. And I'd love the town to hear that there's a citizen that recognizes all the good stuff going on. I'll have one when I finish on this topic, promise, just a couple sentences. But all of your ordinances have not solved many of the problems. Yeah, you can send them a thing, but we still have. Until recently, I was completely surrounded by out-of-compliance properties. Now, a neighbor behind me convinced another neighbor to get 2 of the properties cleaned. So the weeds are down, but they're not gone. They're just shorter. To me, that's still a fire hazard. The neighbor to my east has never been cleaned with the exception of the removal of the 5 dead pine trees, which I arranged for, which after several contacts with the owner, she required a written permission slip from her to the contractor to get the trees down. He offered to do it for free because he did one of mine for free and the neighbor behind me for free. He wanted the logs. Those 5 logs gave him a load, so he came up with a deal. But she absolutely insisted, unless she gave her written permission, nobody goes on her property, and she has stuck with that to this day. I have written to her numerous times. You recognize that. So I know she gets the mail from me. She has gotten the email from me. She has gotten the phone calls from me. The neighbor behind me who has a Kubota and says, I'd love to clean her property for $25, has contacted her 3 times with no response. There are weeds 10 feet high. Your people have seen them. 1656 Ginny Lane. So the problem there is it ain't going to get cleaned. Now guess what? I wouldn't mind buying the property and cleaning it myself. According to Troy Kidd, it can't be sold until 2023. It has multiple years of back taxes. This lady owns the property because she inherited it from her best friend, who was the neighbor I really enjoyed working for and helping her on her property. She dies in a will. This other lady gets the property. She's barely ever been there. She has done nothing on that property to take care of it. Weeds 10 feet high, right next to me. Dead trees within 2 or 3 feet of the street. She didn't sign an ROE to get the trees taken down. Even though I sent her 2 copies, sent her copies twice. Here, you get the trees down for free. Never responded. Now that's just one property. I got one on the other side of me that's not quite that bad, but it is. They got somebody to come in and take the weeds down, but they didn't remove any of the brush. It's just in piles all around. I'm still surrounded by fire danger. Now the one that occurred 2 months ago at the corner of Weedell and Clark, that's only 500 feet from the southwest corner of my property. And in 5 minutes before Cal Fire got there, those flames were 25 feet high. I had every sprinkler turned on that I could possibly find at the back of my yard. I don't want to keep doing that. All the ordinances you have do not solve the problems, and neither does this one when there's an exchange of properties, if the people choose to ignore it. You want to make my property safer? Hire a guy with a bobcat or whatever, clean the property, send the bill to the property owner. Send him another bill. I mean, she's already been fined. She's over $10,000 in back taxes. She ain't going to pay. But somehow, the property's got to get cleaned. If my house burns down because her property catches on fire, I'm after you. Oh, I have a good note for you. The Garden Club does have daffodils again this year. Same deal as before. We're losing money. Bag of 100, $25. By the time we get done with this season's planting, we will have over 185,000 daffodil bulbs planted around the town of Paradise. That, to me, is an applause thing, especially since the town of Paradise adopted the daffodil as its town flower. So get in touch with me if you want some. Thank you for your time.
So I think we have consensus on bringing this back to council at the next council meeting, so I believe that we are good to go on this item.
Okay. 7A2, discuss Paradise Municipal Code 2.45 purchasing system regarding the purchasing officer's powers and duties. Councilman Cullerton.
I'm just a troublemaker. After the fire, it used to be, when I served on the council from 2004 to 2016, we had, back in the old days, pre-fire, when we had just normal life, we had a requirement that any expenditures over, I think it was at that time, $5,000 or something, anything over that amount had to be brought before the council, unless it was in the budget that we approved. And after the fire, and I understand the reason for it, there was so much going on, there were so many things happening, that was raised to where staff can approve expenditures up to $250,000. And so I, as an elected representative of the citizens and as being a good steward of our fiscal responsibility, I just think that that number should be lowered. I know that it's stuff in the budget that we approve when we see the budget, but I just think if we brought that down to, say, $100,000, because we still have big projects to deal with, and I don't want to, I trust the staff explicitly, and I want to allow them to do the work they need without more governmental delays. But I just think that that would help send a message to the public that we, as their elected representatives, are keeping an eye on the checkbook kind of thing. And so that's the pitch. That's what I had it brought on the council for, and I'm going to listen now.
I think that the reasons that existed for raising that to $250,000 still exist. I want people to understand that's only things in the budget. The staff cannot approve, Kevin cannot approve things that are not in the budget. He has to bring those to council. I don't necessarily want to see every one of those financial transactions come before us. We've approved doing those things in another way. And I think that if you don't think your town manager's doing it right, you should fire him and get a new one. So I'm not in favor, Woody.
Kevin, how about your weigh in on this?
Yeah, and I really have no skin in the game on this. Truly, honestly, the skin is really with the staff. I don't do a lot of bidding of jobs or of other things. A lot of times, we're approving the budget and we're following that as our document. And we rarely get outside of that document. And when we do, we bring it back to you. You've seen budget adjustments, and we brought forward a item today that was $110,000, and that's in my realm that I could approve, but it's not in the budget, so I'm not going. That's not in the realm of what I can approve. So what we're looking at is more of a bidding policy, because when you're talking about purchasing, you're talking about approving a purchase. You're not talking about signing the check, right? So this would be a more the limitation here is getting out and actually approving a contract to move forward with a project. Then at the end of that, then you're actually signing the check for it. So when you're looking at the purchasing policy, you're actually looking at it from a formal contract and lowering that down to making that would be the formal contract limit. So anything at $100,000 and over would be a formal contract, which would go through those formal contract steps. Right now, we have an informal bidding procedure that allows us to go up to that $250,000, which allows us actually to go out for contracts much easier than what it would do under that $250,000. So whatever the flavor of the council is the fiscal responsibility of the town, is where that level of where you feel that limit, where you feel like you need to be part of that bidding process, where you feel where I would set the limit.
How much time does it save, the informal bidding process?
That's, I would actually go towards, yeah. Mark, would you like to speak on this?
So as the Public Works Director, I think probably we do the most procurements, especially for contracts of this size and the range between $25,000 and $250,000. The difference between formal and informal bidding processes is significant, especially if it does have to come through the council. So there's the staff report, the agenda item preparation, noticing and having the meeting once a month at this point. But beyond that, as far as the formal bidding procedures require a formal notice in the Paradise Post, which has been a challenge, and then, so I'll leave that one there. I don't know what else to say other than we still advertise with the Paradise Post, and it can take at least 14 days, but usually 21 to 28 days for formal advertisement. Versus the informal procedures, if we do a good job soliciting at least 3 quotes, we can go forward with the lowest qualified capable bidder on that service. The Station 81 Fire Training Tower is a great example of the informal bidding procedures that we use. That was only $25,000, but let's say it was more expensive. We had a safety issue to address, and we were able to get quotes and get that down as quickly as possible. Formal bidding would have added at least another month to that process. So, and that can just be extrapolated over the many construction administration contracts as well, that again are approved in the budget process, and we're being very transparent with those expenditures, but the staff time to administer the procurements and post them on our website, the formal notice in the Paradise Post, those are quite cumbersome, and they do take a lot of time, and we have to do a lot of waiting to get those numbers for the quotes, where if we can find 3 responsive contractors and go forward, that certainly saves us a lot of time and helps us do our job more efficiently.
Thank you.
All right.
Is that the purpose for the $250,000? To allow, I mean, I'm going to claim ignorance here, you know. We used to have to approve, you know, and it was pretty simple. It wasn't like formal stuff that I know of, but that way we were aware of when things happen. But I mean, was the reason for that dollar amount, so that you could do informal bidding and get
more frequently? Yes, because most of our funding sources have guidance and procurement requirements that actually are less stringent than the towns. And so what we tried to do is understanding that we were going to have more procurements of higher dollar amount, find the most efficient way while still remaining compliant with those programs. And so 250, again, I can't even think of an item that we've spent 200,000 on that didn't come before this council anyways.
Right.
So don't get me wrong, but that number was in consideration of the higher volume and more frequent procurements that we are doing and have been doing. Again, our CIP is 800% larger than what it used
Well,
to be.
again, I'll claim ignorance on this because I didn't fully understand it. That's the only reason I
Sure.
brought it up. But I don't want to hinder that. I want us to be able to, because I know how cumbersome formal bidding is, and especially with government agencies and all the crap we get involved with. So, I mean, the only reason I put it on there because obviously I misunderstood why it was there or what it was for, so.
No problem. We still go with the most stringent procurement procedures that apply based on the color of funding. So whether that's local, state, and federal, those are all different. But when our local guidance is more stringent than something federal, that way maybe we can do more quickly, that's a problem.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, and I just, again, just as long as the citizens know, we are each in our own individual ways, keeping an eye on things, and which is, I mean, we trust all you guys, that's not it, but I mean, that's part of what our responsibility as elected officials is. So it's the only reason I put it on here to ask about it. I have a better understanding now of why that number was picked and what it's for, and so I'll let it go at that.
All right, thank you.
Dina, any cards on that?
I have no cards on this item.
So with that being said, do I hear a motion? It's just, okay, we're done. We're done, okay. Item 7A3, discuss and consider providing direction to town staff regarding a letter of support for the 2021 supervisory redistricting of Butte County, which I had put on, and at this time, I'm going to remove with an explanation. Our redistricting is going to be very important to the Ridge, and it's very important that we have a strong District 5 representation. We do not belong in Chico North, Chico South. We need to be in a like community. We need to have the same challenges and successes that our neighbors do. We're in a wildfire area. We have WUI standards, and that's where we have to be. If we were in Chico North or South, we would totally be lost. So I had spoken to Supervisor Teeter this morning, and they're looking at maps to consider, and there's a map that they've got that is, in his opinion, it's a better map for them and will cause less problems in their ability to get an acceptable map passed. I have to trust what Supervisor Teeter told me, as he shares the same concerns that we do. And so I think that with that being said, we have to leave it in his hands to do the right thing. So that's why I'm withdrawing it, and I know we have a card on that. So at this point, Dina.
Thank you, Mayor Crowder. I actually have an email comment that was sent in from John Stonebreaker. Are you turning on? Oh, no. Thank you. This is from John Stonebreaker. I spoke at the supervisor's podium today regarding county redistricting. Not everyone in the room understands the Fair Maps Act criteria or the magnitude of the displacement from the Campfire. The timing and methodology of the census show that District 5 lost 56% of its population before the rebuild gained steam, and we will have to add more than lived here in April 2020. The official figure for the city of Chico, including current and pending annexations, is roughly 104,000 out of a total 212,548 in the county. Currently, the city is divided into 4 pieces, but the Fair Maps Act and the Chico population want to see that reduced to 3. At least 17,000 people from Chico will be assigned to District 5. Doug and Bill are trying to draw their own districts rather than listening to public testimony about communities of interest whose voice must not be diluted. They want to draw the line along the North Fork to put the Campfire on one side and the Bear Fire on the other. There were so few people north of Oroville, west of the North Fork, and east of the highway, and Cohasset, that District 5 would have to take so many people from Chico that Chico would become the majority, in which case our incumbent seats will be at stake as soon as they get enough signatures. The town should remind the supervisors that Paradise has been the fastest growing municipality in California since the census, so to give each Paradise citizen's vote the same weight as votes in other districts. The Paradise district should initially be drawn as small as possible. By 2024, we will have caught up. In fact, if the Bear Fire communities are drawn into District 1, that district will have 2,000 people fewer than the census implies, and District 5 will already be ahead. Just as we deserve the opportunity to be represented by someone who understands the impacts of wildfire and the challenge of recovery, so do our brothers in arms deserve a representative who can guide them through years 2, 3, and beyond. The town is lucky to have brilliant staff who can interface with other levels of government. Those of us outside town limits depend on our supervisor, and the faster housing and people come back north and south of the town, the faster business will come back to Paradise. Please look at the map submitted by the public and by the consultants and give public testimony as to what you feel would be best for the Ridge and our recovery. Thank you, John Stonebreaker, Upper Ridge Community Council, Magilla, California.
So you don't think that we should educate ourselves and weigh in? We should just leave it to the supervisors?
I think we can definitely weigh in, but the map that we were asked to support happened to be one that this
Yeah,
John.
and I don't know
had-
if that one is
Well,
good or not.
I was sent, I think Kevin might be able to.
Well, rather than withdraw this, could we ask Kevin to do some research and come back to us with real information and maybe even a recommendation on what you think would be in the best interests of Paradise?
Sure.
Because this is really important, and I do think we should have a voice.
Yeah, and I think direction given to myself to support a map that best represents the council's direction, which would be having representation that is like ours, would be the direction you can give me. Because the issue with this is it's going towards going before this Board of Supervisors on every one of their meetings, and they have an opportunity actually to take action on that at each one of those meetings. And so we're not sure which map will be the one that they take action on. So what direction can be given is that at the next council meeting or the next Board of Supervisors meeting, I will make sure that the supervisors understand that the council has given direction of what they feel is the best interest for the redistricting for their representation.
Can we find out what Peter knows? I mean, I'd like to see what his opinion is on the district we're in.
What I can do is have Teeter send me a map that he would favor, and then I can forward that on to the council.
Yeah, I mean, because, we're certainly not going to support.
So I talked to Supervisor Teeter for a little bit today also. He did bring up some good points. There are 3 separate maps. There's a Plan A, B, and C that is on Butte County redistricting. The one that's closest to the way it has been is their draft Plan C. I have not seen the other ones that were submitted to the Board of Supervisors yet. However, we do want to have, like areas with us. On the other hand, there is a good argument that if you have 2 supervisors that are both representing fire areas, then you have 2 voices on the Board of Supervisors versus just having all the fire area under one supervisor. So there's 3 different maps. Maybe if we haven't had enough time to look at them, we could. I haven't seen the other one that was proposed at the meeting today, though.
So we should all be taking a look at that stuff individually. I mean, so that we are educated enough to know about it. I mean, plus, anybody that knows anything about it, talk to me.
Yeah, I believe that Kevin sent a copy of the map that Supervisor Teeter was speaking to me about. That was not one of the 3 maps that was at the meeting today, because according to him, it was submitted too late. However, since they did not vote today, that map will be looked at as well.
I can forward that on, yes.
I think we all have concerns. Sorry. I think we all have concerns about being put in a district that's dominated by Chico voters and losing our voice. So I think you know what we are all concerned about and what we want to see, so.
And plus, non-fire people don't have any understanding of
That's
what it
right.
takes to rebuild, of what it takes to survive or anything else. So we need to keep the supervisors we have and the district we have.
And I think that is their idea too. There's just the map that Kevin had sent out is very similar to what John had proposed. Doug felt that it was a little better map because there's some issues of everybody has to give up a little district. And it seemed that this other map, he seemed to feel that it would be easier for he and Bill Conley to work out. But it's very similar, and it keeps us out of the Chico end. So that's why I don't want to write a letter supporting the map C that after talking to him. So
let's all look at that and we can do something. If we have to have a special meeting, we can do that. I don't get paid any extra money for having special meetings.
okay, so
It's time.
7B, council reports on committee representation. Rose, would you like to go first?
Rose.
Rose,
I met with membership from the Parks and Rec on the project to entice pollinators up here onto the ridge, and possibly looking at developing a monarch butterfly habitat on the ridge. And then I spent time at Cal Cities for most of a week, and attended some of their classes and things there.
we lost you. We lost your voice, Rose.
I think she stopped talking.
Is that it?
I don't know what part you lost, but I just said then I also attended the Cal Cities training for, what was it, 3 days down in Sacramento.
Okay. Also, too, I apologize. I missed, you had a comment you wanted to make on that last, and I just saw that, so, or did you get a chance to ask it?
Yeah, I did. We're good. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, perfect. Jody?
I attended several meetings on the sewer system, one with Assemblyman Gallagher, which is mostly just keeping him up to date on what we're doing. The second, the Sewer Regional Advisory Committee met yesterday. That's the mayor and vice mayor of Chico and the mayor and vice mayor of Paradise, and we're negotiating the principles of agreement for an agreement between Chico and Paradise if we were to connect a sewer system in our commercial area to their plant. Those meetings are going really well. We've made huge progress. I don't think we have a whole lot left in those principles of agreement. We're waiting for a few things for some of the engineering work to be done to give input into how certain things should work, but for the most part, we've reached agreement fairly easily and all seems reasonable. We yesterday talked about a schedule for how we would bring those principles of agreement to the full councils, ours and Chico's, and that'll be happening, I think, not too long after the new year. So great progress there. And then I also went to BCAG and I attended AQMD for Rose, and there was really nothing of note at either of those meetings.
So I think I only have one committee that I'm supposed to go to, Consortium of Care, and I'm completely flabbergasted. I did reach out to, I don't know who's in charge of that thing, to somebody to try to explain to me in what way our participation in that committee, how there's any benefit to us. I mean, it's really made up with a lot of people that the Jesus Center and different places that have real homeless communities and homeless contingencies and organizations that are well-staffed and funded to deal with that stuff. So I listen to what they say, and I don't see where a lot of it pertains to us or where there's real benefits to us. So I'm trying to find somebody, the right person there to talk to find out if there is. Can you explain to me whether or not there is? And so that's what I'm doing, and that's it. Go Giants.
Well, I attended a lot of the same meetings that Jody did. I also was at the League of Cities. We also attended, there's a group which includes Councilmember Tryon and myself and our police chief, our town manager, and Jeanette Higgins from PD Dispatch about what we can do to bring our PD dispatch back in-house, either full-time, part-time, what have you. So we had our first meeting on that, so that's going to be an ongoing thing, and when we come up with something, it will come back to the council. Kevin and I met with the Upper Ridge Council here at Town Hall last Wednesday, which is where we got some of the information from the map. That's, I think, something good to meet, and we all kind of keep each other informed as to what's going on. We have reached out to Adventist Health to see if we could get Rick Lawson here to give our citizens an update of what's going on with the hospital and let him answer questions. I know they're working on it. As soon as we hear back on that, we'll report on that, and that's about all I've got.
Wait a second. Didn't you work the event at the park?
I did.
Appleseed Days?
I did.
Yay!
Thank you.
Yes.
And it was a very great event. A lot of people came by. A lot of positive comments.
Yes.
So it was a great event.
Yes, thank you for working here.
Thank you for reminding me.
He's so funny.
Future agenda items.
I have none this time.
Rose?
Unless we want to talk about having lots surveyed before sales. I don't know what the council's pleasure is on that.
Would you mind, Rose, if we got through the weed abatement before sales first and then we tackled that one?
Not a problem. We can hold off on that.
Great. Okay. Item 8A, Town Manager Report.
Yeah, I'll give a quick report, and then Susan's going to give a quick report too, and then we'll get out of here. So a lot of time this last month has been working with Mark and Brian Selecki on really pushing the FEMA, the PA work and the reimbursements of that getting in, and also with the hazard mitigation grants, really pushing those forward and getting clear direction on that, and then trying to get a firm idea of where we are with our insurance claims. We still have quite a few insurance claims outstanding, and then we're looking to kind of get things moving forward. And that kind of brings me to a future kind of committee that I'm looking to put together, which is a facilities committee. I think we have a lot of property out there that we had a lot of ideas moving forward, pre-fire, post-fire. We have some insurance claims that are going to be coming in, and just get a firm direction of where we want to move forward with our facilities, and so that we have an understanding of where we want to plan for those facilities into the future, and even town hall, what we want to do with town hall and this building itself. So I will be kind of recommending that we form a facilities committee so that we can kind of get clear direction on moving forward with that. We also met with the insurance commissioner to discuss future insurance in the town. He has reassured us that he has the utmost concern with the town of Paradise, that it is one that continuously is in his mind when people are submitting zip codes for pulling out of areas that looking for Paradise itself, and making sure that he is trained to negotiate keeping insurance in Paradise, and then looking at creating an affordable model associated with that. On that also was Mark Northcross, who was the individual who's doing the grant, was on there to kind of help facilitate that, and then Rose was on there also. And at the end of the conversation, the staff from the insurance commissioner's office was very open to working with all directions that we see moving forward to help with insurance within Paradise.
I would question like whether or not, and maybe Garrett knows this too, I mean, we're in an SRA and an LRA or whatever it's called. I mean, the fact that we are still considered an urban wildland interface, for insurance purposes and some of these other things, the forest burnt down. I mean, there's not a forest here anymore, It's a little bit different, and can't we get redesignated, at least for insurance purposes? I don't mean let's let up on weed control, but, fire safety stuff, but the forest, what was that designated that, doesn't exist anymore. I mean, there are pockets, yes, but
Yeah,
I'm just curious if there's.
I can run that up the flag. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I also attended the League of California Cities. There was some great presentations and some good classes. They actually merged the finance, what they normally have, like a municipal finance officers association, with the League of Cities. So there were some good finance tracks to be able to move forward there. I did attend Gianni Appleseed Days for a half day on Sunday. We had great kind of interactions with our citizens. One of the most positive things I heard was, and this is not positive for Chico, but a lot of them were just ready to move back out of the valley. They do not want to be in the valley anymore, and they wanted to move up. Lots of people taking some of the flyers that we had there to help them with permits, moving their permits forward. Just a lot of real positive talk and actions there with that. And then lastly, yesterday, AB 36, Gallagher's bill, was signed by the governor, so now it is law, and so that is to help with the expediting the construction portion, so we can do design, build, construction on the sewer pipeline project. So that was a very positive thing moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Just a really brief update on community development projects. So for actual development projects right now, since we spoke last, we had Butte County Housing Authority. They actually have an apartment complex here in town. It's 12 units off of Sawmill. And so that came in for rebuild, so that's great. Multifamily is fantastic. Carriage Car Wash over by the PID offices, they are starting to do some of their fire damage repairs, so you'll start to see a roof get placed over the shell of what's there, which would have already been certified by an engineer structurally sound. So they're working to put a new roof structure on it in the efforts to finish the rest of their old use permit conditions to get that back up and running. Also, we took in a use permit application for a new church here in town. They're looking at the old Dale Johnson building on Wagstaff, kind of near Skyway on the hill there. So they've got their septic approval. Now they've applied for their use permit, and we'll take it to commission for that. It's a new church, I think Pentecostal. And then also, in case you haven't seen any of the social media yet, Grocery Outlet is aiming to be open by the end of the month. So we're really excited for that one. And then also, we've been working on the side with the housing element update. So last month, instead of planning commission, we did our first community meeting. And while we didn't have a very high turnout for in-person, we did have people attend virtually. And then we put a survey out for questions to get feedback on really on priorities for housing and fire safety policies for both the housing element and the safety element. And we got back over 350 responses. So that was fantastic. So at the end of last week, our consultants, our housing element consultants, got us the administrative draft of the housing element. So we're just looking at that at a staff level, providing the feedback, and the next step's going to get public input on it. And then we can kind of finish up with the environmental, and at the same time, we'll be starting to get the safety element ready for review also, because all of these things are going to be completed late next spring, early summer, because that's our deadline with the state. So it's moving ahead really nicely. And that's my update.
Good job, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
So with that, we have no closed session.
No closed session. We may have a special meeting. Sorry.
Microphone.
Sorry. No closed session. We may have a special meeting towards the end of next week, but I'll have Dina coordinate that with you. If that's okay. We're thinking like maybe Thursday, Friday, late next week. So.
Oh,
Just FYI, I have eye surgery on the 20th. So if that's next week, is that next week?
Yep, that's Wednesday.
Yeah, that's next week. So I won't be available that day unless it's in the morning.
Okay.
okay. So with that, thank you, everybody.